to speak as far as, as if I'm addressing everyone so that
Okay.
people are watching the recording. They can, and I'm going to pull up the live site too.
Sounds great.
Just so people can see that.
Awesome.
And all right. Okay.
So you're good to go.
Awesome. All right. Welcome. So this is going to be Newsela for distance learning. A little bit about me. We kind of chatted already, but my name is Krishma Amin. I'm a professional learning specialist at Newsela. But prior to that, I actually was a 7th grade science teacher in Atlanta, Georgia, before I moved up to New York City. So I actually used Newsela before even applying for a position at Newsela, because when I was teaching science, having quite a hard time getting students to make connections to my standards and to the real world. So I was looking for an outlet to kind of have students keep up to date with science news, and for me as a teacher to find articles relevant to what we were learning about. And I just, fell in love with Newsela from there, especially coming from a science teacher who, technically I was not trained as a reading teacher. So having a tool like Newsela was helpful. So these don't really apply since it's just these are just some norms. But throughout the session, I'd like you guys to kind of think about what are your most significant needs with distance learning, and we can talk about some options with that. There's 3 kind of sections today in this session. We're going to first talk about setting the tone, and that is going to deal more with like routines and more to kind of like how to have students feel like they're still in a classroom type setting, even though they're at home. The second section we're kind of going to go over is supporting self-paced or student-driven learning. There's with technology today and with all these different softwares, there's a lot of different ways we can really put the learning in students' hands with the situation that we are in now. And then lastly, we're going to talk about staying connected. How can you stay connected with your students and with families, caretakers, as we call them, and because that kind of ties back into section 1 even, and wraps everything else very nicely. So because it's just me and you, we're going to kind of go over all 3 sections, and teachers can kind of pick which of these will best their needs and interests, or do a combination of all 3. So for my friends who are kind of new to Newsela and don't really know what Newsela is a content platform, instructional content platform that provides nonfiction and now actually fiction texts, but we're known mainly for our nonfiction texts. And we publish about 10 texts a day, and try to keep up with current events. Our content is pretty awesome. Sometimes I'm just shocked about the content that they can get up in the time that they do. It's pretty amazing. And the other kind of thing we're known for is our differentiation on Newsela. So every nonfiction article is available at 5 different reading levels, so that students can read content in a level that they're comfortable with. And then lastly, we have, with our new products, we've created these collections to kind of make it easy for teachers to take Newsela content and align it with their standards that they're teaching in the classroom. So the first thing we're going to talk about is setting the tone. There are 3 ways that you can really get started with distance learning. So the first one is starting with remote routines, right? So we have this social emotional learning resource that's great. So with this new release of products, right? So as you may know, we have provided all 3 of our new products absolutely free for the rest of the year. And along with that, we also have released our social and emotional learning collection. My colleague Emily, I'm going to click on this so you can see. My colleague Emily has actually put together This resource, I'll click on this. And what this has done is taken a lot of pulled apart pieces from our social emotional learning and kind of put them in links and a nice, easy, digestible way for teachers to use based on what they want students to kind of reflect on. So for example, if you're having students talk about empathy at home, there's a suggestion of what you could do and some articles that you could assign. So this is basically the social emotional collection, but this is just providing teachers a nice, easy way to kind of access that if they're not very familiar with the collection on its own. So there's other SEL activities. There's some additional resources that we've kind of addressed here at the top. And then these are student write prompts and instructions that you can provide them with the articles at hand. So by the way, all of these resources that I'm clicking on in the session, I can actually throw it in the chat. I think that would be easier at the end of the session. And I can also email it, however, whatever makes it easier. But all of these are also housed on our Educator Center. So when you're on the Newsela homepage, anywhere on the homepage, this top right corner is the Educator Center. And the Educator Center has everything from how to, assign an article to, you can see here, a lot of our stuff right now is has to do with distance learning, right? But there's ready-made lessons, there's videos and webinars for teachers to learn how to use the platform and how to use it for different teaching strategies. So we have a lot of different things. So everything I'm pulling from here is coming from the Educator Center and is open to everybody. All right. So speaking of things that are available on the Educator Center, we also have these ready to use activities. So again, if you go to the Educator Center and scroll to the bottom, you'll see this category that we've put here called ready to go assignments. These assignments are created by my team here at Newsela, the professional learning team. And what we've done is taken articles or created text sets even, which are just groups of articles, and put in instructions that are ready to be used for students. So I'll go ahead and click on one so you can kind of see. Let me actually go back to this one. Here we go. So I'm going to click on this, click on read, and it's going to take me directly to a text set like this, and you'll see that it already has instructions. So makes it nice and easy for teachers to kind of use these in the beginning. I definitely recommend these for teachers who are a little bit newer to Newsela. So if you kind of don't know where to start, you don't really know how to assign things and create things from scratch, I would definitely start by setting the tone with these ready to go. These are also going to help students, if they are new to Newsela, kind of get acquainted to Newsela and start feeling comfortable with it, right? And then teachers can kind of take it into their own path and make assignments as they feel more comfortable in it. The last resource I'm going to show you on this page is the remote learning plan. It's the unit plan that my colleague Ellen has actually created. So when I click on that, you'll see, again, it's going to take me to the Educator Center. And what Ellen has done here is actually put together a 2-week unit plan that has students doing a passion project based in Newsela. It comes with, you'll see, I'll scroll down to like day 3. All of these are built at a middle school level, but then you can see that there's differentiation for high school and elementary grade level adjustments. Student actions, so this is what you would tell students to do, and this is what you would do on the teacher end. So it's kind of, again, a nice place to start. One, if you want students to kind of get a little more comfortable with Newsela. 2, a great place to start if you are still getting used to Newsela. And 3, if you just kind of need to provide something for students to work on, while you kind of get organized yourself for the coming weeks and, the rest of the school year that is going to be remote. Excuse me. So those three right here are 3 ways to kind of just go ahead and jump into distance learning with Newsela. Okay. If you are brand new to Newsela, if you're kind of like, okay, I've used it, but I don't really know how to use it in this distance learning type setting. I've only used it physically in the classroom. These 3 resources are, again, great place to start. I want to take a second out let me just hop out of this, to just show you the live site real quick. Just in case we have some friends who are brand new to Newsela, okay? This is the Newsela homepage. We have our hero article here, which is, the one that gets released most, the last released article, right? And you can see here, I can explore by, Spanish articles down here. We do actually release about 3 to 4 articles that are also translated in Spanish every week. And you'll see here that we have this distance learning section, which I can show you a little bit later. Obviously, that's just up there for right now. We created a toolkit for election 2020, which I'm not sure many teachers are worrying about right now, but in case that's there, we actually had that long, we released it back in, I believe, end of January, beginning February. Our news section. So our news section is this is how Newsela started. This is when Newsela was first created. They had the news tab, and then they had these following categories. And teachers would browse. If I was a science teacher, I'd click science, and I would browse through current events in science. So those are pretty, straightforward. The library tab. So this library tab is where you would find more of your informational text. I do get this question quite a bit. Why is it called the library tab? Because it was kind of designed after a nonfiction section of a library. So you'll see here that when you click on library, you'll see this left navigation, again, broken up into different categories. If I scroll down on this homepage, I'll see seasonally relevant content. So like we have this category for April Fools, animal in the news. This one's really popular, most popular with students, right? So which ones are students kind of gravitate towards more on Newsela? And like I said, again, latest Spanish articles in the library section, things like awesome. So that's the news category and the library category. Those are all nonfiction texts. Now, when I dive into the ELA Science and Social Studies product, these are built a little bit differently. These are our newer products, right? So I'm going to kind of show you the ELA product first. Just know that the outline, the design of each of these pages are the same, right? So every page is going to have this left navigation and a main homepage, whether you're in ELA, science, or social studies. Of course, if you're in the ELA product, this is designed keeping ELA teachers in mind, right? So in the left navigation, we have Explore Collections, and then if I scroll down, we also have a section called Explore Articles. Now, Explore Articles is just where you would find individual articles, just like how I showed you in the News tab or the Library tab, but you can drill down a little bit more specific here. For example, if I am searching for an article that has to do with poetry, right? And I select poems, I'm gonna just have articles that are poems, right? I'm only gonna have texts that are poems. If I'm searching for an opinion piece for my ELA class, and maybe I select pro-con articles. So this is gonna show me what, these are really popular with our social studies and ELA teachers, are pro-con articles, which show a, so I'll kind of click into one so you can see. You'll see that there's a and it goes into detail, and then there's a con side and it goes into detail. So teachers get really creative with these articles. But yeah, so the explore articles section is really to drill down on individual articles that would work for you in your classroom or for whatever lesson you're trying to design. The explore collections section is where you would find curated content. It's content, that is put together by our Newsela content team. And what they've done is they've provided these collections. They're almost designed around kind of like textbooks, right? For example, we do have, textbook or curriculum alignments down here. And at the top, you'll notice that we just have popular strategies, frameworks, things like that at the top. So sections are, and I'm going to show you an example because I think that's the best way to kind of understand these. I'm going to select this paired text, fiction and nonfiction. So this isn't necessarily a collection aligned to a specific curriculum, but just kind of an overall strategy that a lot of ELA teachers use, right? So when I click on the collection, I'm going to kind of see this nice overview. You'll see here that we've even added strategies for remote learning and how this collection in particular can help, and how we recommend each text set be used. The first thing I'm going to do is select a grade band. So I'm going to select, let's say, middle school, and I can scroll down the bottom and find a paired text that I think would work for my students. So let's say I click Ticket to Freedom. And now here's the cool thing about collections. All collections come with an implementation guide, or what we call lesson sparks. Lesson sparks are going to look different depending on what collection you're in. So for example, lesson sparks for this particular fiction, nonfiction collection, no matter what paired text I select, it's going to look the same. Okay, it's going to have a lesson setup, comparison questions, sample lessons. But if I click into a different collection, this might look a little bit different. So you'll see things like maybe lesson setup, which is really cool because you'll see here it's giving me student instructions that I can actually just kind of copy and paste and use. Comparison questions that I can put in my write prompt and ask students to answer. And even sample lessons, so I kind of know what this actually looks like in a classroom, and see what real teachers are actually doing with this paired text strategy. So that's kind of the benefit of having using a collection, right? One, you're not searching for individual articles to put together, and then you also have this implementation guide available. So I'm gonna just dive into the science product real quick. I don't go into as much detail just because, as you can see here, like I said, each product homepage is designed the same. You have explore collections and then explore articles. And obviously this looks a little bit different because we're keeping science teachers in mind here. We even have, for our math teachers, they have a little section here in the science product to kind of find things that they need as well. Each homepage also has these seasonally relevant categories. So for example, these are experiments for students to try at home, especially for this time. Springtime science, articles with ready-to-go science quizzes, text sets for science. This is obviously might be a popular one right now, understanding viruses, health and medicine, things like that. Again, the social studies product looks quite. So we have our explore collections. There's a lot of social studies collections, and then explore articles. Again, keeping social studies teachers in mind. I'm going to just show an example of this because I love that there's a primary sources section here. This is really popular with our social studies teachers. They can click on primary sources and have students look at letters, Supreme Court cases, speeches, landmark documents. So even if I were to select speeches and select, President Kennedy's 1963 speech, right? Really important speech. But guess what? Students can read it at a level that they can truly understand the speech. So max level is always going to be what the original article, or in this case, speech, was written in. So if you want students to read the original speech, you would select it on max, right? But that doesn't, and you'll see here at the bottom that what grade level that what that Lexile level correlates to. So this is a 12th grade level. So although the original speech is written at a 12th grade reading level, that doesn't mean we have to only allow our 12th graders to read it, right? If you switch to I'm going to put on the lowest Lexile level available, and you'll see here that this changed to grade 3. And now, even at an elementary school level, obviously this is not the original speech. It's much shorter. The vocabulary has changed. Sentence structure has changed, so that even a 3rd grader reading at grade level could understand this speech on hand. Now, you'll notice here that it says recommended for middle school and high school. Well, why is it not recommended for elementary if it drops down to level or grade 3? Now, that's a great question. The Lexile level, or the grade level, and the recommended for doesn't necessarily correlate. So for example, the reason this speech is not recommended for elementary school is because it probably most likely requires a lot of background knowledge that a 3rd grader probably wouldn't understand, right? But again, this is available for a middle school or high school student that may need to read it at a 3rd grade level, or a 5th grade level, or even a 7th grade level, right? So I think I'm in a good spot here to pause real quickly and see. Carrie, do you have any questions before I move on?
I wish that I had this when I was teaching. This is awesome. I was a math and science teacher, but I would have used this so much in my science class.
It's and honestly, I sometimes they release new science topics in the science product, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have used that. And I was really big on relating math and science together, even though it's just a science teacher. I would have used that math connection section like no other. So I feel you on that. It really is such a great tool. I absolutely love, I never taught social studies, but this famous speeches is probably one of my favorite categories. The fact, even just thinking about myself as a student, thinking about if I had this tool when I was a student, how much better I would have comprehended a lot of things I was studying in school. When I did have in social studies, when I would read famous speeches or primary documents and things like that, like I always wonder, well, if I could have read it at my level, I wonder how much better I could have understood it, right? So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. I do want to, we're going to hop back into the presentation in just a second. I just want to very quickly kind of show you what you can do in an article. Again, just in case some of my friends are fairly new to Newsela. So students read an article, they can click on the activities panel, and you'll see here that there's at least a write prompt and a quiz available for all articles. Now, because this is available in the social studies product as well, you'll see that I also have access to a social studies write prompt as well. So the quiz is just going to quiz on reading comprehension skills, okay? It's 4 questions, and because it's 4 questions, we don't really recommend it being used for any type of summative grading. It's to be diagnostic and actually more so formative, and just to kind of check in on students' reading comprehension from time to time. Teachers have access to a write prompt. It's going to come with this, pretty vague write prompt, but teachers can actually edit it to make it their own. You can see here I can just type normal and change the write prompt to whatever I want.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
I have a guest that just entered. Do you want me to let them in mid-time, or do you want me just to tell them that we'll have the recording out?
I mean, whatever you feel comfortable with. I think they could join and see, and I'll just kind of continue where I'm at. Okay. And they can always check out the recording after.
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'll wait just a second for them to hop on. There we go. Hi, Joshua. All right. So I'm going to continue. I'm just kind of showing what you can do on every Newsela article here. So if you're on an article, you can change Lexile levels to see what your students would see, right? You can kind of preview whatever quiz they would. You can edit the write prompt. So in this one in particular, this also comes with the social studies write prompt. So you'll see here that the write prompt is different and asks a little bit more of based on social studies standards here. Those are also customizable, right? Like the ELA one. And when I see everything that I'm like, okay, this is what I want to assign, I can actually click assign in the top right corner. And I'm going to be taken to this assignment detail page. And here you'll see this is the article that students will see. I can change the title, like due on Friday, if that's what you wanted to change it to. I can select a class, right? I don't have any students right now. I can add any instructions. So for example, I can tell students, read the article and take the quiz, answer these social studies, right. There is no limit on how much you can write in this instructions panel. So you can link graphic organizers, you can link videos, and really make it a full-blown lesson and detail it as much as you want, right? So there's really limitations here on the instructions panel. The last thing I want to show you is this right here, this text level portion. So you saw how you can adjust the Lexile levels, and students can do that as well. But in some cases, you may, as a teacher, want to lock that Lexile level. So I can actually click adjust level. And let's say I'm teaching 7th grade and I want everyone to be reading at a 7th grade level. I can lock that speech right in place and click lock. And now that text is only available to my students at a 7th grade reading level. Or, if it's famous speeches, I want every student to read the original speech as it's written, as JFK said it, and I'm going to lock it at that level. Okay. Otherwise, if I lock the Lexile level, students are going to see it at their Newsela recommended level. This is going to be different for each student. So when teachers first set up classes, they're going to input a grade level. So a Newsela recommended level is going to be maybe at first grade level, and then as students take those reading comprehension quizzes that I showed you earlier, that Newsela recommended level may be different, right? So it usually takes about 5-ish articles, depending on the time frame, 5-ish articles to get students a really confident recommended level, right? So you may have some students that are reading below grade level, at grade level, or above grade level. And so, yeah, things that are taken into account is the grade level that you input when you're setting up your classes, and how they perform on reading comprehension quizzes. So when I'm ready to assign this article, I'm going to click the big blue assign button. Or if I'm not quite ready, I can always save it as a draft. And you'll see that it says this, it has this yellow tab right here that says draft. So I know that my students can't see it. I can click back into it and click assign when I am ready to assign it. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to, that's kind of the Newsela 101 in a nutshell. Obviously, that is not everything that I could talk about Newsela, right? But that is kind of the basics of the new products and just the basic of what you can do starting out as a teacher with Newsela if you are new. So I'm going to head back to kind of what we can do with Newsela as far as distance learning. So we talked about the social and emotional resource that you can use to kind of help students establish a routine, you know, have them offer them strategies for self-monitoring, motivation, even while they're at home. And another thing we really want students to do is kind of end their day on a regular reflection, just like you would in class, right? At the end of class, you always have some type of closing activity that has them reflect on what they learned in class or what they did or anything like that. And it's still really important to kind of maintain those routines. We also talked about those ready-to-use activities and assignments. So again, if you're not fully comfortable creating assignments from scratch, we have a variety of assignments that are ready to be assigned. You literally just have to click on it. Let's say you wanted to assign this SEL one, you click on it, and it would take you directly to your account, and you would just click assign in the top right corner. And then lastly, we talked about this remote learning unit plan, which is the 2-week unit plan that provides directions for you as a teacher and to students on how to build skills and research a passion of theirs. All right. So let's move on. So our second section is we're going to talk about supporting students with self-paced learning. So during this time of distance learning, it may be a good time to kind of practice those student-driven learning strategies with students, especially because this is something that I used to do as a teacher myself. I always kind of started my year with a lot of hand-holding. A lot of my instruction was teacher-driven, and slowly towards the end of the year, I would kind of move my learning units to be a little bit more student-driven, personalized learning type of strategies. So, because we are kind of at the end of the year, trust in your students that they do know how to kind of they do know how to learn on their own, right? They've been with you all year. They were so lucky to have you for the time that they did, and they're ready to kind of drive their own learning. Of course, with teacher guidance. So there's a few ways that you can design flexible student learning for students using Newsela. You can leverage those collections that we talked about, right? So if you are still planning on teaching students the skills and standards that were required of you, then collections might be the best thing for you, right? So that it can still be student driven and still stick to the standards. So have those collections ready, leverage those collections so that you're not completely starting from scratch. Stay connected to your scope and sequence with these units that are ready to go, and leverage those lesson sparks we talked about, right? Where you're really putting the learning into the student's hands and doing this flipped learning type of strategy. Another thing, and part of that is offering students options on how they respond, right? So I don't know about you, but I always had students that some could express what they've learned better if they wrote it down. Some expressed it if they just told me, you know, and at this time of distance learning, those options may not be as easily available. So kind of just thinking about what technology is present. So using things like Flipgrid, right, for students to respond and express what they've learned, or utilizing the right prompt that I showed you to kind of get students' thoughts on paper and to communicate to you. And then lastly, the way you could kind of support students with self-paced learning is creating mini lessons through videos. So we actually have this Newsela flip kit, as we call it, where we show you as a teacher how you can really flip your classroom in more detail to, again, provide students a way to learn on their own, but with your guidance. So you can share recorded lessons to introduce a concept or even model for them. We have loads and loads of student series videos for students to learn how to use Newsela on their end. And the flip kit, which is kind of, this is a preview of the flip kit, right? So there's ways that you would, you know, create a recording. There's ways that you can video conference, and then there's ways to connect with students if either of those options are not available, either through like an LMS or even through Newsela. So again, just to kind of recap, if you're wanting to keep up with your units and your standards and have students work on those foundational skills, collections is going to be where you're going to want to go, exploring the different collections. And this video here that's linked here is a video that kind of just talks about how collections work. I did kind of go over it already, but this video goes into a little bit more detail. This right here, really, really useful video. It is a student-facing video. In fact, we have loads of student-facing videos showing students how to sign up for Newsela, how to join a class. And this one in particular is a student-facing video that shows students what they can do on an article, right? So I'll just share a little bit of it.
Hey students, here are 3 things you can do on any Newsela article. If you click the activities flag on the right hand, you can see there are 2 activities in this folder. If you click the right prompt, you'll see a question with an open response space. You can type anything you want in here.
So again, this is just showing what, this is completely from the student perspective of Newsela, so that it's a little, because sometimes it's a little bit difficult if you have a teacher account and you're trying to show students how Newsela works when you have a teacher account. So definitely leverage these videos we have here. We call them lessons. Little lessons just mean that they're student-facing videos, right? And we can, again, at the Educator Center, apologies, let me go back here. We have a whole section on the main page dedicated to little lessons. So these are all the student-facing resources here. And if you click see more, you'll see that we have things like student sign up, how students can do an open inquiry lesson on Newsela, how they would join class, and things like that. All right? And then lastly, our flip kit that I was talking about, that is going to kind of be a way for you as the teacher to learn how you can create that flipped classroom, and a bunch of different ways you can do it so that you are still providing guidance for students while the learning is in their hands. All right. So the last section we're going to go over, we have about 15 minutes, so we're totally good with time. And I want to leave
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
And my Siri's talking. Here we go. We want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for questions. So staying connected. Again, all of these can be found in on the Educator Center. So there's a couple of ways that we talk about staying connected. first being leaning on management system, whatever that may be, whether you log in through Google Classroom, Clever, Canvas, Schoology, leverage that LMS. That's what it's there for. LMSs are created to connect teachers with students, right? So create tasks, spark class discussions. This remote teaching toolkit has loads and loads of strategies on how you can do that. Facilitate discussions and collaboration between students, because unfortunately on Newsela, there's for students to discuss with each other. It's a great way to keep you and the students connected, but student to student connection doesn't exist on Newsela. So rely on your LMSs, right? We have a lot of different ways. If you go to the Educator Center, there's bunch of videos, support articles on how you can get connected based on your LMS. The second way to stay connected, like I said, there's a lot of opportunity on Newsela for teacher-student connections, right? One way being providing feedback through the binder, right? So you can actually respond to student annotation. So students can actually highlight on Newsela like this. This is an example, and a student can write in the box. You'll notice that on your end, you reply to Christina, for example. So you can actually, I always use this example. I had a student about, now I guess it's been 3 years, 3 years ago, that was definitely shy, definitely on the quiet end, didn't really talk in class discussions. But him and I would actually chat via annotations. So he would write a comment, I would reply back, he would reply back to what I would say, and we would kind of go back and forth. So it was such an interesting way, because I think in person, face to face, he probably said maybe 3 words to me in like the first semester. But the amount of chatting we did via annotations was amazing, right? And we're talking about these articles and things he found interesting in each article really easily. I mentioned that students can respond to write prompts, and you as the teacher can actually respond back to those write prompts. So whatever the student submits, you can actually provide feedback, have a conversation back with them, and send back that feedback or the conversation back to the students. And the last thing we want to talk about is family communication, right? So we talked about, student-to-student communication and just overall teacher-student communication, teacher-student communication with Newsela, and then lastly, family communication, right? So we have a lot of different, on our homepage of the Educator Center, we have a lot of resources available that are meant for caregivers. Things like a schedule and a plan for distance learning, a letter that you can send home to caregivers explaining how you're going to use Newsela and how it kind of works into your distance learning plan, check-ins to see what challenges and questions are coming up, and different resources for parents, and even a way for them to create caregiver accounts as well. So I encourage all of you to kind of some time to review a lot. This is a lot of resources that we've provided and that we've created in the short 3 weeks that we had. So explore the Educator Center and really take some time out to grab resources that are going to be useful for you at this time. Okay. So I'm going to hop out really quickly and just kind of show the Educator Center one more time. Again, this is kind of what we have going on featured. So we have, this is our last hosting office hours. We were hosting them for the last 3 weeks, but we are going to post on-demand recordings of them. For example, this one had to do with Newsela and Google Classroom specific. We have distance learning toolkits for admins. We've been getting questions specifically about Google and Google Classroom. So this resource is something that would be very helpful for that. Our distance learning category has a lot of the new resources we've created. So for example, the family letter I was talking about, the unit plan, caregiver toolkits, setting the tone with, you know, let's see, what's something that I didn't mention in here? This one's really important. How to use the mobile app, which is really, really important. Fun fact, the Newsela mobile is available on iOS and Androids, but doesn't require internet. So students can actually work on Newsela Arts offline, right? Which is pretty cool. So that video goes over, it's about 2 minutes. It just kind of goes over how the mobile app works on the students, which is really nice. Also on our homepage, we have, here we go. Like I said, our student-facing resources. This is where we're sending teachers if they are very new to Newsela. So I know I did a brief introduction, but if you're looking for more information on how to get started, like how to sync your classes using Classroom, how to, let's see, here we go. How Newsela ELA works in more detail, Newsela Social Studies, Science, right? How the SEL collection works. You'll see that we have all of our other integrations and so on. Even I mentioned text sets, how text sets work, annotations. So our new teachers our teachers that are new to Newsela, we definitely want to direct them to this section right here, get started. And then I showed this already, also our ready to go assignments at the bottom. All right. Do I have any questions from anyone who's logged in? Or anything you guys think I should kind of go over?
I'm
Awesome. All right. So I do want to just so that we can kind of get everyone on the same page, I am going to show you very quickly kind of how you can sync classes no matter how you're logging in. There's two things you want to. If you are trying to sync with Google, you need to be logged in with your Google email, okay? So I'm actually going to sign out here, and if I choose sign in, I want to definitely make sure I'm signing in using this Google button. If you're new to Newsela, you may click join now, right? Say you're an educator, answer all the questions. And again, if you're using Google, you'll want to sign up with your school Gmail account. Okay, otherwise your classes from Google Classroom will not transfer over nicely. So I'm going to sign in with Google here. Select my account. Okay, let me see here. It'll ask me if this is my first time logging in. It'll just ask me my school so that I'm connected and we're ready to go. And it'll just give me this nice little starting. All right. It'll ask you a few questions. Here we go. All right. So now I am ready to set up classes. Again, whether you're using Google, you're just doing it on Newsela, whether you're doing it through Clever, Canvas, whatever, you want to hover your initials in the top and select settings. You're going to click classes, and there's a few things you can do. So if you are if you're trying to create classes through just regular old-fashioned Newsela and you're having students use a join code, you would just hit create a class, type in the name, the grade, which is really important because that's how Newsela is going to determine that Newsela recommended reading level, and the subject. And then you would just hit create a class. Okay? Students, you would give students this class code and they would type that in on their end and they'd automatically join your class. if you're using an LMS, so for example, Google, there should be a second section down here, and you would click sync now, select the grades that you want, classes that you want to transfer over, and click sync. Again, this is going to look similar if you're syncing from Clever, Canvas, Schoology. It's see a section like this. It'll say synced classes from whatever, and you would click sync. And your classes, as long as you're using the same login for both, you would be able to bring your classes over. Okay. So yeah, that's just a brief intro. Again, if you have specific questions about how to set up your classes based on your LMS that I didn't go over, go to the Educator Center, right? Click on the Educator Center and type in, like if you're looking for Canvas, you can type in Canvas and you'll find a lot of full resources. Okay? Awesome. I think covers about everything. I see that we have 3 more minutes, and I want to use up as much time as we can. If there's no questions, there's just one thing I want to show you just real quick, and that's the distance learning toolkit here at the top. So this is from everything that you see in the Educator Center. I'm going to click on distance learning. This is Newsela curated specifically for distance learning. So you'll see this has its own little home page, and it has useful articles, links to our reading clubs, and if I scroll down here, I do see links to the Educator Center, but I'll see these really useful categories. I have a staying connected section, which has some articles that goes over, these are meant for students, right? And these daily lessons. So these are really cool. This is being done by our content team. So I'll click on like middle school, for example. And we just started this last week, which is why there's only 2 weeks so far. And what this does is creates a cross-curriculum daily lesson that teachers across the board can use. For example, I'm just going to click on week 1, right? And when I click on week 1, you'll see that I give like a nice agenda of, it's going to give me a subject for each, a concept for each subject, and then some type of SEL concept as well. And if I click on each day, it's going to break down the tech I have and how to use them for ELA, social studies, science, and then go beyond that, right? So that you're not browsing articles and trying to come up with lessons last minute. There's always the go-to kind of daily lessons, and it tells you even how much time is spent. So this is a great way to also create student-driven learning, right? You could assign this as is students and say, okay, spend 25 to 30 minutes completing this activity for today with these articles. With those same articles, you're going to do this social studies instructions with this right prompt, so on and so on, right? So I think that's really cool. So glad that our content team is working hard on that every day. All right, there are no other questions. I think we are out of time, but thank you guys so much for joining me today. And I hope today's session kind of gave you some ideas, gave you some comfort, and sparked some ideas for you as well.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, my sister's talking to herself. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything else for you?
No, I think we're good. I will get this recorded and I will get it posted online as soon as I can.
Awesome. Yeah, Zoom is taking a bit of time, so it may take a second to kind of load, but
absolutely.
I'm excited for you and your teachers. Thank Thank you so much for joining me today. Feel free to reach out with any questions via email.
Will do. Have a great day.
Will do. Have a great
Awesome. You too. Thanks.
Bye.